Iowa State A.D. Jamie Pollard had some very interesting comments regarding the school's financial situation, uh, primarily surrounding the athletic department and what the future could hold for Iowa State and the challenges ahead. We also might talk a little bit of Iowa State football and what the 2025 season looks like with the return of Rocco Becht and company. We're going to dive into all of that in this episode of Couz's Corner in this Big 12 spotlight focusing on the Iowa State Cyclones. And we have a very special guest coming on to have that discussion, and we'll do that right after this word from one of our channel sponsors. Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. What is up, and welcome into this episode of Couz's Corner, your home for top-shelf college sports news and analysis around the West Virginia Mountaineers and the Big 12. On tap in this episode, we're talking once again about the Iowa State Cyclones and the comments made by Jamie Pollard. I talked about that in a previous show, but I wanted to bring somebody on who covers Iowa State to kind of get their take on it and what they're seeing around the program, and also wanted to talk a little bit of on-field, maybe even some on-court stuff as well. To do that, I brought on Mr. Rob Gray, who covers Iowa State for the Cedar Rapids Gazette and is also a contributor over at Cyclone Fanatic. Rob, how you doing today?
Nice to be with you, Couz. I'm doing okay. A little bit of a cold, but we soldier on, right?
Absolutely. And I appreciate you taking time out of your day to join the show.
Certainly.
So let's just get started real quick. We'll start off with the comments made by Jamie Pollard in an interesting podcast the other day surrounding the situation at Iowa State financially around their athletic department, and he seems to be concerned about that $20 million rev sharing. So what are your? Did you hear the episode I'm referring to, and then what are your thoughts about what he had to say?
Yeah, I didn't hear the entire episode, but it's been a bell. I don't want to necessarily call it an alarm bell, but a concern bell, perhaps, that he's been chiming, striking since basically, all this stuff started to come into place, house settlements and these types of things. So a little background. I mean, obviously, West Virginia, longtime West Virginia fans will probably have heard of Pollard over time. He's a pretty outspoken guy. He doesn't mince words. If anything, he's been through everything. The realignment that you guys were a part of in a different way, way back when, and it was an existential threat to Iowa State. In the first round, the first big round. So a long preamble to say that Jamie's going to, in his opinion, tell it like it is. And he's, he didn't hold back. It's clear he believes, and I think this is becoming clearer across the country, that there needs, these self-funded athletic departments. I mean, there needs to be some state government intervention in these areas now, given what type of revenue that state institution flagship athletics generates for the state.
Yeah.
West Virginia and Iowa, anywhere, Michigan, Florida, wherever you want to talk about it, Utah. So I think Jamie's really trying to get it into the heads of the Iowa Board of Regents, and they have a long-standing, I don't know what do you want to call it, maybe a principle or position that they're not going to be involved in funding athletics. Well, I think given the way the model is going to be moving forward, there needs to be something like that. I know some universities think they're doing it through raising student fees, like a special student fee. That's a big hike for students, obviously, and we know how much tuition increases have just skyrocketed over the last couple decades. So I think that's a harder one to swallow when you can just find a way within the state's coffers. It's a relatively small amount of money when you talk about a state's entire budget, and allocate enough so you can be competitive in this way with that $20 million, and see how else everything goes with the shifting around event, NIL, and who's in charge of that, how is it done, and that all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's my understanding that based on some of his comments in the interview that he said that the Board of Regents at Iowa State does not allow, or I guess at Iowa, because they oversee both universities, right? That they don't allow the school to contribute to the athletic department.
Yeah.
Is the way I interpreted it.
Yep.
Do you think he's so in your mind he's trying to ring the bell to say, hey, we need to change that philosophy, then we need to change that rule so that we can get more help? You think that's kind of what he's doing, or do you think he's actually talking to the people at the state capitol and trying to get their help, or maybe a little bit of both?
Yeah, it's probably a little bit of both. I mean, look, the regents obviously, they're going to make decisions for a variety of reasons, and obviously in different states and in different ways and all that. It just would seem a no-brainer that investing 20 million, 30 million, 40 million, 50, well, 20, 50, the state of Iowa has University of Northern Iowa in this, which has some
Right.
D1 programs. Where would that factor in? But let's just spitball and say a $50 million annual contribution split between Iowa State, most of it, and then so you and I getting some. Well, Iowa football and Iowa State football brings in far more money than
Right.
that for their local communities. And that has ripple effects. I mean, Iowa State's near Des Moines, the state capital. University of Iowa's in Cedar Rapids, the second largest city in the state. So it would seem to be Jamie's trying to make a common sense plea, but doing it in such a very forceful fashion, which is
Right.
his generally the way that he comports himself. So yeah, I think it's all of the above, and I think something probably gets done everywhere, because what's the point in going through all this to then come to a point where, oh my God, now we can't find 20 million, and now we're going to have to be like, I don't know, dropping out of the Big 12 and competing in the Missouri Valley Conference. I mean, nothing against the Missouri Valley Conference, but it's a big difference, and I'm not sure that's good for the universities, given where they've been for so long.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty confident as an outsider. Obviously, you would know more than me, being being in Iowa or closer to the situation. But I'm confident that they'll figure something out and be able to pay that $20 million, even once they get through the reserves that he's talked about, that they're currently going to use, which he claims are only going to last about 2 more years. But
Right.
I'm confident they'll get something done. Are you confident they'll get something done?
Yes, I am, and I'm very confident. I mean, unless you can't foresee exactly how things are going to be, the landscape in general. But college athletics is too big of a business, and it's finally going to be recognized as such. More of a professional type of situation, which was necessitated by the fact that the NCAA insisted on keeping the student athlete model long beyond they knew it could be tenable. And they knew they were going to lose in court. They kept losing in court, and so you get the Wild West of the NIL, and now you hope some sanity put on that, because there's a lot of good in NIL, and there's obviously a lot of bad too.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see how that goes. But I think every state, it would make economic sense for them to contribute in some way, because again, the return on investment would be pretty pretty major.
Yeah, agreed. I totally agree with you. I think that these large universities and their football team, men's football or men's basketball and football teams, just they're such an economic. I mean, I think Jamie Pollard said he used $100 million as a number, and I don't want to quote him because I don't remember
Sure.
the exact quote, but on the local economy. So huge impact, and I'm sure it's similar at West Virginia and other places. As we get ready to dive in to this next segment of the show, where we're going to talk about Iowa State Cyclones football and maybe even a little basketball, I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of this segment, and that is our good friends over at Elite Scuba and Adventures. At Elite Scuba and Adventures, you can first off check them out at elitescubaadventures.com. You can also find them on all social media platforms. They're located in Northern Virginia, but they offer all kinds of different services. They have PADI Discover diving. They have open water certifications. They do advanced diver and specialty courses, including dive master certifications. They have bundle and save deals that they can offer you. They also offer a 10% discount to first responders and veterans. They do diving trips to Tigert Lake right here in the great state of West Virginia. They do a trip to Key West, Florida, and they do an annual trip to Thailand every year for amazing diving. Also, if you want a discount and you are not a first responder or not a veteran, you can get a 5% discount by using Couz code 25 at checkout. Again, it's COUZ CODE 25. It gets you a 5% discount at elitescubaadventures.com. So if you've ever wanted to go scuba diving and learn how to scuba dive, give them a call. Or if you are already a scuba diver and want to take part in one of these awesome trips, check them out there as well at elitescubaadventures.com. And for you West Virginia fans out there, there's a bonus. It is owned and operated by a fellow mountaineer. So go support this fellow mountaineer and help them out at elitescubaadventures.com and thank them for supporting what we do here on the channel. If you don't mind, I'm gonna switch gears and let's go ahead and talk about on the field stuff
Sure.
a little bit.
I prefer it.
Me too. It's May, so it's never too early though, right?
Absolutely.
What Rocco Becht's returning for the 2025 season. Iowa State did lose some pieces off of last year's team, right? That played in the Big 12 title game. What is the overall mood around Iowa State football? And then if you don't mind, follow that up with just talk about a little bit. Did they have a lot of portal activity, and kind of touch on some of that if you don't mind?
Yeah, I would say probably a below average amount of portal activity. They lost a couple of offensive linemen they were fairly high on, these Helton twins out of California who redshirted last year. I think they went closer to home or maybe a different situation. They lost a few guys that certainly contribute, but nobody a major, in a major capacity. And they brought in some, impressive guys. And Xavier Townsend out of UCF, who I don't think ever fully flowered there, but a guy that they feel like can flash in a lot of ways, help be a Jalen Knoll type. He obviously won the third round of the Houston Texans with teammate Jaden Higgins, Eastern Kentucky transfer, going early in the second to the Texans as well, a unique situation. So they feel like he can be a Jalen Knoll type. They brought in Chase Sowell, another, guy who has kind of a Jaden Higgins body type. And they got returners who they like in a tight end room that was really banged up last year. Ben Bramer, who was a freshman All-American in the past, couldn't play most of the year. I mean, they were really banged up at tight end and linebacker in particular. And that helped them develop some depth, but certainly made the fact that they broached double-digit wins for the first time in program history all the more remarkable because they were putting guys on the field that weren't even on the three deeps at linebacker at times.
Wow.
So
impressive.
That's how bad it was. Yeah. Well, sometimes you get a little lucky too. Yeah. But I mean, they had the guys at least in the position to have the want to, as coaches often say, and to go out there with their hair on fire and make some plays. Not always in the right position, but certainly, doing everything they can. So they they feel like they addressed some needs in the transfer portal, and they didn't lose anything major. And that's kind of been a hallmark under Coach Matt Campbell. They've lost, early on in the transfer portal era, they lost some key contributors at safety. Craig McDonald went to Auburn, didn't really work out. And then he went to Minnesota, didn't really work out. He was really coming into his own at Iowa State. So that was kind of a cautionary tale a little bit. And then Isheem Young, really good, went to Ole Miss, didn't really pan out the way you'd think, and maybe another cautionary tale. But that allowed Bo Freeler, a guy that played with one arm, at safety last year. He came into his own then when Isheem Young left. So I think they're really happy about the opportunities that the new guys are going to have. But again, when you got 4 guys drafted in the first 4 rounds of the NFL draft, which Iowa State has never had that many go, and I think they were one of the only non-Big 12 or SEC school to have 3 guys drafted in the first 3 rounds. We throw in Darian Porter, a converted wide receiver and specialty team star, into the cornerback mix, who wowed everyone at the combine. That's a lot to replace, but it's not like wholesale. They feel like they've got guys that can fill those roles, and again, when you get more production tight end, you got all your running backs back, you got a third-year starter in Rocco Becht. That's a lot to build off, including some guys on the defensive line like Dominic Orange, if he could stay healthy and on the field.
Yeah. Complete opposite situation of what West Virginia's dealing with. I think West Virginia's going to end up with 75 or 80 new players on a 105 to 125 man roster. So depending on how that house settlement thing shakes out on the roster thing, but I mean that's remarkable.
It's a new old era, right?
It is, man. But that's just the world we live in college football or in college sports in general today. I mean, roster chaos, roster makeovers. especially with a coaching change.
Yeah.
When you got, and Neil Brown and Coach Rodriguez are really different in how they approach things. So, there's going to be a culture shift probably. So, it's just, and with the transfer portal being basically guys being able to go in whenever they choose,
Yeah.
that door was opened. So, what is, obviously Rocco Becht's coming back. I'm sure Iowa State fans are excited about that. What's the running back situation looking like there? With is Abu Sama expected to be the guy, or is there going to be some competition there? What's going on there?
I really feel like Carson Hansen came on last season.
He had a big night against West Virginia.
Carson Hansen, I think 13 rushing touchdowns, 15 total touchdowns. Really came on late in the season. But he had big moments. He was banged up throughout the season too, so he was sometimes on a pitch count. Fans would be on social media. Carson Hansen had a great series. He doesn't come back for a while, but it's because they're talking to Carson Hansen. He's like, "Don't feel great, coach. I don't feel great. I don't feel great." So you're cycling in a Jalen Jackson, who was a transfer last year. They had a couple big games. And Abu Sama, who flashes. I mean, we saw, the snow game at Kansas State a couple seasons ago where he 270 plus yards, 3 touchdowns. He has the flash, but he hasn't been the guy that is willing to accept a 2-yard gain when nothing's there, and it instead turns into a 2-3 yard loss. That's one of Abu's, bugaboos, I guess you could say.
Right.
But they're really happy with those guys as a 1-2 punch. And then they had Dylan Lee, a freshman they were really high on, come in last season. I think they preserved his red shirt. They got some homegrown guys that they're fairly high on too, as guys that can come in and spell people. But I think they feel pretty good about that room. To be honest, it hasn't. Oddly enough, it was their most productive rushing season, average yards per game since Breece Hall's last season, and it was just a hair below that. The season before, they'd have some big games, but then they'd go back and just do virtually nothing on the ground. I think that speaks to the offensive line getting a bit better, which is always a big issue at Iowa State. If they can take another step, that's going to be huge too. But you've got depth there. You've got guys who've done it. That's all you can ask for really at that position. Guys who've been in the program for 3 years, and again, that's true up front as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Defensively, what are the expectations on the defensive side of the ball this year?
Well, you lose a lot there too. I mean, Porter really emerged as a guy who could never find a position, but was just a special team star because of his length and his speed and his work ethic. He finally starts at cornerback, more or less starts, but plays a majority of snaps, and is a lockdown type guy next to a pretty good corner, and certainly very good corner in Jontez Williams, who's back. That's a big hole, but they've got a lot of guys they've been able to work through back there, and because they've had a lot of guys injured at safety, and they really across the board, I'm sure most teams do, but they pride themselves on some positional flexibility. So you got guys that can cross over, play safety, got some linebackers that can cross in and play nickel, and you got some corners that can mix and match with the safeties as well. So they've got some guys that they're certainly you're pleased with. They brought in some transfers in that area. Freeler, again, one of the great leaders of the program, along with Jalen Knoll, who, at safety. He's going to be missed a lot in a variety of ways. But they got Jeremiah Cooper back, who was one of the leading Big 12 guys in interceptions a couple seasons ago. Very solid last season. Certainly an all Big 12 performer, first team, I believe, 2 years ago. And again, solid last season. More depth there. Guys are banged up. Drew Surgis. A lot of guys that are hungry at that position. The D-line is going to be the big question mark for Iowa State this year. They've really struggled to generate any pass rush since Will McDonald became their first round draft pick in 50 years in 2023. They've been down the chart, and I think last season just barely over a sack a game. And they don't sell out for it. They're still great in turnover margin. They had games where they got gashed because of the linebackers and safeties being inexperienced because of injuries. But that D-line has to produce more pressure on the quarterback. And they've got some guys that they think can help on the edge, but they can get up from the interior too. I mentioned Dominique Orange. He's definitely an NFL player if he can stay on the field. And that's been the challenge with Dom Orange. Can he play the number of snaps that they need him to play? And so far, the answer has been no. But he he talked to us during spring ball, and it sounds like his mindset has surpassed that. I don't want to say almost a self-imposed plateau of what he
Mm-hmm.
could snaps he could play. Um, when he's out there, the defense is completely different. So I think he's the touchstone for that defense. They've got enough other guys around him. Ike Ezeagu's done a lot there. They've got a lot of depth on that line. But if he can be the star and he gets some help from the edge, and the linebackers bring out Caleb Bacon, who was one of their best pass rushers before he got hurt in the first game last season, missed the entire season. A couple other starters who either barely played last year or got hurt in spring ball. I mean, you've got a lot of creative pressures you can do when you've got that good of a linebacker group and a guy at nose guard like Dom Orange.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I was looking at the schedule, and I was thinking in my head, West Virginia and Iowa State don't play this year, and I was right. So as a West Virginia fan, because this is a fan channel, I'm kind of happy about that because it's been a struggle against the Cyclones the last several years, and it looks like they're going to be good again. And this is probably not the year that you want to face them with Rocco coming back, and West Virginia being in the middle of a rebuild, so to speak. I don't think it's great. Would be great timing, but and with this crazy Big 12 scheduling with 16 teams, you can't play everybody. So
yeah, it's going to be tougher for Iowa State this year. I think generally because they get some teams that were better. They play at Colorado, for instance. I mean, you start the season in Dublin, which the fans think it's great. It is great. Kansas State conference game. Don't have to go on the road there. So you take away a road game, but then you play the next week, even though it's against FCS South Dakota. That's a grind after you switch time zones and all that. And, and that's a good FCS team, and we've seen what good FCS teams can do.
Yep.
Even really, really good programs early in the season. Then they've got Iowa, and then they did this home and home with Arkansas State, so they'll be at Jonesboro, Arkansas, and then into the thick of Big 12 play. So it'll be a tougher road, but again, they navigated it last season somehow while losing all their starting linebackers and sometimes their twos. And Rocco, although generally efficient, the amount of his interceptions that turn into pick sixes is shocking, to be honest. I think it's like 38% of his interceptions have turned into pick sixes in his career.
That's astonishing. I wasn't aware of that. That's pretty remarkable.
It's just wild. And some of them are circumstances. I mean, they're desperately trying to come back, and you just throw into that in double coverage or whatever, and you just hope the guy can make a play, and instead it goes the other way. But I think, and by the way, there was that one outlier. Neil Brown got the Mountaineers up, what was it, a couple of years ago to really thump the Cyclones. And I know we said this felt like a culture-defining win, and in a lot of ways it probably was, but just couldn't sustain it, obviously. So you bring back Rich Rod. But I think in this era, sometimes a total makeover doesn't necessarily mean you're rebuilding. You know what I mean? In the college game, I think that's just outside looking in. I can probably look at it. But
it's fair.
Especially a guy who's been there, done that, obviously hasn't had as much success in recent stops, but we'll see. Got Scott Frostbeck at UCF too. So
that's going to be an interesting, and West Virginia and UCF play each other this year. So that's going to be a very intriguing day. You got the two quote unquote recycled coaches returning to their old stomping grounds. But looking at the Iowa State schedule here, I mean, it's pretty tough. Like you mentioned, that Colorado, they also they also have to go to 2 TCU and 2 Oklahoma State, but they do get Kansas, Arizona State, BYU at home, so that's a good thing.
Absolutely,
some of their tougher opponents at home, so hopefully that'll help. And they get a bye week before BYU, so that should help as well.
Yeah, they get a few bye weeks in there. It's just odd that they wouldn't get one after the week 0 game.
I know.
Because I don't know if K-State does either. I haven't done enough of a deep dive into their stuff.
They do not. They have to play – ironically, they play North Dakota the following week.
Oh, okay. So we get both probably top 10 FCS programs.
Then they play Army.
Okay.
Wow, that's going to be a tough – and then they play at Arizona, whereas Iowa State plays at Arkansas State that week. So very intriguing schedule for both teams there.
No doubt.
So, and West Virginia plays neither one of them. So that's good because as we saw last year, West Virginia played Kansas State and Iowa State back to back last year, and it did not go well.
Yeah,
got thumped in both games. Hey, do me a favor. Go check out my good friends over at Appalachia Digital. If you need a brand new website for your small business, or if you're just looking to get found easier on Google, go check out AppalachiaDigital.com/Couz. These are the fine folks who designed my brand new website over at WVSportsChat.com. They did a fantastic job. I love their work. I think you will too. So go check them out. AppalachiaDigital.com/Couz. Let them know Couz sent you. Now let's get back to the show. But just real quick, and then I'll let you go. Let's touch just real quick. We'll talk basketball if you don't mind.
Sure.
What's any breaking portal updates or just in general? What's the portal activity been like for the basketball team and the Cyclones this offseason?
Yeah, there was certainly some drama. Like with most teams, I mean, you see, it's much more. I guess I want to say intrigue filled with basketball because you have so few roster spots and so much movement.
Mm-hmm.
So it's I think the guys that transferred, they expected to transfer. In some cases, encouraged to transfer.
Mm-hmm.
Either guys who didn't really contribute or guys who didn't contribute very much. They did lose a starter in Deshaun Jackson, who I think is just a situation where he can get a better deal for himself. And I don't think anyone begrudges anybody for that. He was solid, but I think fairly inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
And they replace him with younger guys with at least a couple of years, just kind of more like rim running bigs. It transfers. And Buchanan out of out of Virginia, and Mulder, who played at Purdue Fort Wayne, Indiana Purdue Fort Wayne, an Iowa kid. Got a lot of guards. They lost a lot of guards. Keyshawn Gilbert, when healthy, was one of the best guards in the Big 12, obviously.
He was good.
Early in the season, and Maui just looked like one of the best guards in the country and could never really get right. And then who knows what it was all about down the stretch when he didn't play. But you lose him, you lose Curtis Jones, who obviously became a star, just a dagger deliverer from deep, and with his floater. I mean, so those are big, but they get Taman Lipsey healthy. They brought in some other nice pieces at guard that are sort of versions of those guys a little bit. You just don't know how it's going to translate, but they're all D1 guys. So I think they're happy with where they're at. They did add a guard late. Dominic Nelson out of Utah Valley was the WAC player of the year. Got to the free throw line. I think the rate he got to the free throw line led the country.
Wow.
So that's something they're always looking for, the way they play,
mm-hmm.
the transition with the turn teams over, get to the free throw line, get to the paint, all that. The 3-point shooting will come with Milan Momcilovic, they hope. Joshua Jefferson, one of the more versatile big men, I would say, in the country, coming back. So you got a nice core. Nate Heisey really came on late in the season through the UNI transfer. So they love their core. They feel like they've picked up the right complementary pieces. And frankly, under TJ Otzelberger, every year it's clicked to some extent. I mean, they made the tournament every year, 2 Sweet 16s. Last year falls short in part because of the injuries and absences. But I think they're pleased with where they're at, especially to get that late ad. They're making sure to hold on to Jefferson and
mm-hmm.
company.
Good. Yeah. And Otzelberger's name keeps popping up for open jobs in the NBA even. I've seen a few times. So hopefully they can hold on to him. I think it'd be good for really the whole conference, because Iowa State athletics right now is in a great spot. They're, and it's good for the league when they have teams like Iowa State who are excelling in both men's basketball and football the way they are right now, and at a historic level for Iowa State, really.
Yeah, the good news for Iowa State is it was always TJ's dream job. He had stints as an assistant under Greg McDermott, who's at Creighton,
mm-hmm.
under Fred Hoiberg, of course, at Nebraska. The mayor, they called him with Ames until went on to the NBA, and that didn't really work out as a head coach. So this ties back into what we opened it up with. As long as they have the resources to compete, that draw for TJ is going to
mm-hmm.
mean a lot. I mean, it could keep him there for a very, very, very long time. But again, they're all competitors. And if you can't compete at the level you want to, that's when you go, well, I have these other opportunities. I really want to pounce. Not to say you never would otherwise, but certainly having the resources could keep somebody who's long been in that position of, hey, this is where I want to be long term. That's hugely important.
Yeah, it definitely matters, especially now that the SEC and the Big Ten are somewhat separating themselves from the rest of us from a financial perspective with these TV deals and whatnot. I think it's going to be tough going forward, potentially. Now, hopefully the House settlement helps some of that. but it could be tougher going forward for the Big 12 and the ACC schools to keep coaches and to keep players and to compete at that level. But we'll see. Hopefully, the House settlement is ratified and settles some of that down and puts everyone on somewhat of a more level place. It'll never be totally level because it never has been. Let's be honest.
Yep.
But at least it'll get back to a more reasonable level, like it once was.
Absolutely.
Well, Rob, man, I appreciate you coming on. I know you've got other things to do, so I'll let you go real quick. Just you let people know where they can find you and your work again, if you don't care.
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on. I'm not as active on X, but I'm there and posting all my stories and interacting. At times, I'm on Blue Sky. Sometimes I'm on Instagram. And obviously, people can find me. If people message me on X, I'll generally get back to them unless it's the messages where
I get it.
You don't respond to.
Exactly.
But yeah, there, Cedar Rapids Gazette, CycloneFanatic.com. And that's where people can find me for sure.
And for those listening, obviously his Twitter handle's on the screen, or his X handle, I guess, is on the screen. But for those listening, it's at Rob W. Gray, just like it's spelled, ROBWGRAY. So, Rob, thanks again for coming on the show, and hopefully we can do this again in the future.
Absolutely. It's fun to talk to you, Couz. Take care.
Take care. I want to thank Rob for coming on the show. I hope you really enjoyed the interview, the conversation with him around Iowa State sports. I hope the rest of your day is top shelf and cue country roads.